Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Jean Marie Loria. As you know, probably, I typically do not present for Advise Health, although you see a lot of me online on LinkedIn and I guess various other places, conferences and such. Last month, Dina Bland and Eric Rubenstein gave us a presentation on coding versus auditor. And after the presentation, we had quite a few people write in about Excel, requesting some tips and tools for Excel. As you know, auditing still requires a great deal of Excel. So, as is typical here at Advise, sometimes if you know a little bit about something, you get voluntold that you're going to present it. Unfortunately, it's me today. Unfortunately for me, fortunately for you, I don't even know. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to give you some high-level tips that I believe will help you be efficient with the work that you do. If you have any questions, I'm going to be in Excel doing some functions. Please share them. Either somebody from our team will answer or I will answer later in a blog. Also, feel free to write to us at info@advisehealth.com, advise with the Z, obviously, and we'll get back to you. We'll definitely want to make this interactive, but also have some good information to cover, so we want to roll through that as much as we can. Okay, so let's get started. Yoga Auditing turns 10 this year, and I felt we should kick off this webinar with just a moment to talk about our breathing and our posture. So please sit there for a moment, take a deep breath in and out, roll back your shoulders, sit up, and enjoy the rest of this. Okay, what about me? What do we need to know before we get started? We're all in this industry together, so if you're not good at Excel, you've come to the right place. We could still do this together. I did spend most of my career in Excel, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. So if you know me, you know my social media, you've seen my mom. The Jean Mom is our main investor from back in the day. She also continues to be in charge of all of our swag. So if you see this t-shirt that she's wearing or the t-shirt that I'm wearing with our new logo and you feel that you want one, she would be the person mailing it out to you, and I have more information about that. You've probably seen her cat. This is Mo the cat, and he is a little bit of a mascot around here now. But he actually came from Eric Rubenstein, which usually is our main presenter. He is from the OIG Roundtable. If you have not listened to it yet, please give it a listen, because as if this isn't enough New York accent, he could also share his. Let us know with our info@Advise Health if there's anything you want to see topic-wise from us or have any questions. We would love to hear from you. And then finally, about me. This is what I actually look like on vacation. This is a real live picture of me when I was on a soft vacation earlier this summer. My credentials: I'm a project person by background, so I have my PMP. My MBA was in finance. In undergrad, I did computer science. I did get my CPC about a decade ago now. And I really do love Excel. That's my hammer for everything. And when I came to Advise 12 years ago, I had a bunch of CPCs that reported to me, and I didn't really understand anything about what they did, but when I did get my CPC, I was able to at least have an appreciation for the CPT codes. Now, some of my auditors around here could tell you that I can't audit worth anything, but I hope that I always do indicate and show them how much appreciation I have for what they do. I read a quote somewhere that was talking about what is an auditor. Of course, it's a noun. It's someone who does precise guesswork based on unreliable data provided by those of questionable knowledge. So enjoy that. I don't know, it could also be known as a genius or a wizard. I started 20 years ago. I came here 12 years ago, which is so crazy to me at this point. We have over 100 employees now. We're in various different lines of business, lines of work. We work both with payers, providers, the government, and we've gotten pretty big. Although we've extended to different types of work, whether it's investigations or compliance, a lot of our work still greatly depends on the auditors. We started 20 plus years, I think 23 years ago, mainly doing medical record review, very much based on CPC audits. Still to this day, that is the backbone of what we do. I present this slide every single time since I think 2017 that I present, because I think it's important to speak to, so although this is from 2017, it's still important to speak to our spending as a country and our output, our results as a country. So we're always top spend, and then when it comes to overall how we're doing, we sometimes are ranked like in the middle to the end of the chart, which tells me that there's ways for us to do better as a country with our healthcare, and it comes down to cost. So that's our obsession. That's why we're still here. That's why we do what we do here at Advise. This shows you more of our shirts. This is from a t-shirt selfie promotion that we did back, I think it was 2 years ago now, for $4. This amazing organization. Actually, if you're familiar with $4, Jared, the founder, is shown here. For every single person that posted a picture with our hashtag Advice Selfie, we donated $50 to $4, and $4 helps people crush medical bills. We love the organization. And if you want a t-shirt and don't have one, please email me directly. I would like your address to send the t-shirt and your size. jluria@advisehealth.com. You could DM me on LinkedIn, wherever you want to do it. All right. Obviously, I love the sound of music, so this is also required in any presentation I give. Let's go back to the very beginning, a very good place to start. My first job, I was 20 years old. Why my mother has this bookmark, it looks like a mass card. Somebody told me, like, oh my God, I thought you died. I was like, yeah, you should be so lucky. And my first job, they made this bookmark, and I think they gave it out. I don't even remember. This was a long, long time ago. But anyway, here I am, excited to be in Excel to the tune of 40 hours a week. I did financial analysis for a utilities company before I actually went to go work as an auditor for KPMG. What I didn't really know then was how useful all the Excel that I was doing every single day would be in my life. I learned hotkeys. I learned how to really just go through Excel every single day, using it as my tool for everything. This makes me feel very old, so we're going to move on from this. So what does all of this have to do with you? Well, the importance of getting your Excel right. I mean, like, enough about Advise and Gmail, let's go, all right? So even if your work is correct and you get to the right result, if you're not presenting it well, it really isn't a great reflection on you. So how do we help make sure that your work is untouchable? Haha. We could make sure that you always password protect the right kind of data. So if there's PHI, we want to ensure that we're not sharing anything that shouldn't be shared just over email. Spell check before you send out your workbook, saving the file with the first cell selected for each spreadsheet so that someone is not opening your workbook mid-idea of whatever you were last working on. When you hear the term robust, we think about formulas not having any potential for error. So if someone was to change some of the data in your workbook, would it break anything? So we want to make sure that we think about outliers so that you could input anything and it's still going to work. A few years ago, the great Maggie Stankiewicz, who is a fan of the Untouchables, recorded a webinar with us about the basics of Excel formatting, and I asked my team to share this. So later on, take some time to look at this if you want a deep dive into best practices of formatting. Continuing along, though, however, with programming concepts. The basics to programming is input, process, output. So what kind of data is going in? This is true of any kind of program that you would see, like a computer program, Excel. So what kind of data are we using for inputs? What do we want to happen to that data? And then what kind of output are we looking to achieve? A key question to ask yourself is, has this been created before? Always go back and think about, have I used this? Has somebody else on my team maybe made this? Because you don't want to start from scratch if you don't have to, right? So check with your colleagues. Maybe somebody else has a template, or do a quick Google search to see if you could find what you're looking for. Of course, it may not always be what you need, but it might be a better way to efficiently get to the answer. Syntax and semantics. So beyond the input, process, output, when we start thinking about syntax versus semantics, it's important to keep in mind about what you want to do. So as far as real life grammar, syntax is the study of how to create grammatically correct sentences, while semantics is the study of the meaning of the words and how they relate to each other. In Excel, we could think of syntax as the structure of the formulas and the functions, like doing the equal sign at the beginning of the formula, while semantics is how the formulas and functions are performed. This is helpful when you think about, did I get the expected results of a computation? It could be more of an issue around semantics than syntax. It's easy to see errors when it comes to syntax, but a bit harder to see when it comes to semantics. So let's go to an example right now. Going over to Excel. Okay, first, syntax. So here we have our formula. If D8 is greater than E8, you might be wondering why this is not showing D8 as selected, highlighted. It's because right now Excel is not treating this as a formula. It's because I put in an apostrophe so that we would be able to see this formula. So I'm taking that out. Now it's going to tell us if D8, 3, is greater than E8, 4. In order to use the function if, must put in a value if it's true or if it's false next to what the test is. So we do not have a value for either one of those. It's going to throw a syntax error and not let us continue. So I press enter, and here we have the error with the formula. It must have one of those two variables next to it. So let's go on to semantics. We're going to correct this syntax issue, which is not using the formula properly. And if you ever want to know more about the formula, you could always just click on it and it'll take you to something like this online. Let's take a look at the if function right here. So this tells us about if. And this is just by clicking right in Excel. It takes you here. It takes you all about the formula. And common issue is if there is nothing entered for the if true or if false value of it. So that's where we made our syntax error. From a semantics perspective now, okay, so we're going to pass through what's required, which is a value for if it's true or if not, okay? So what we're saying here is D10 greater than E10. So in real life, what does that mean? Is 3 greater than 4? We know that the answer is no. So 3 is not greater than 4. It's actually less than. This statement, if it's true, should say yes first. So is 3 greater than 4? Yes, if it's true, and no if it's false. However, because we have put these in reverse, it's going to output the wrong answer. So 3 is not greater than 4. We know that. That's a true statement. We should say yes here if we wanted it to be correct, but instead we want it to be wrong to show us semantics. So semantics allows the formula to run fine, but if we don't give it good information, it's going to output the wrong value. So is 3 greater than 4? No, but it says yes because we entered it incorrectly. That's just a simple example of how syntax versus semantics works. Let's, before we move on, just show a formula using a drag down feature because this is still pretty simple for Excel, but it's something that's commonly used. Okay, so we want the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's keep going down. We're going to just enter 1, 2, and then we're going to flash fill the rest. It's going to take us down. Okay, great. Now, if we wanted our formula to be correct, yes for the true, no for the false. And let's say we want the 3 to stay the same, but change what we're doing here with the reference of the E10 and then just bring it down every single line. What we would do to keep the 3 the same is so first you select the cell, D10, okay? Function F4, that is going to keep our cell just static and not change. And then the E10 will change as we copy this formula down. So, is 3 greater than 4? No, that's correct now. Let's put our other numbers below the 4 and then just drag and drop this formula to see what goes on here. Okay, so is 3 greater than 1? Yes. Excellent. Is 3 greater than 2? Yes. Is 3 greater than 3? This is interesting. No, it's equal. Is 3 greater than the rest of these? No to all of them. So that is a way that we copied our formula down, keeping the 3 static, but having the second variable change as we copied it. It corresponds with where the formula is. Pretty basic stuff. Moving on. Another key concept in programming is the difference of functions and variables. I have always approached Excel with the thought of how could I make this formula more useful. I never try to replicate the same work, and that is where variables come in handy. From a computer science perspective, a variable is used as a way to store data that can be used later. It's a way to reduce the number of times an equation has to be typed. A function is reusable code to perform a single related action. As it pertains to Excel, functions are used to help make complex calculations easier and speed up what we're doing. So sum, average, finding minimum, maximum, those are common functions to help make what we're trying to figure out more efficient. And the basic syntax of a function is the equal sign, the function name, one or more arguments, put in the parentheses. Functions take a number, such as like 5, cell that we saw even in the other example, such as A4. You could do things, operations to the cell, the number, and have it calculate. Some of the most common functions are sum, product, and AND. Product multiplies a range of numbers or cells, and AND performs logical tests on data. If this seems like a lot right here, no problem. Feel free to go away from this webinar. You can leave now and save yourself, or you could just continue to listen on and see some of these concepts, and it would be nothing to go to YouTube, look up some additional Excel fundamentals, because we're about to get into some of the more complex things that you can do to Excel. So I don't want you to think that, oh, I'm not sure about this. This is very overwhelming at this point. Feel free to email us your questions, info@advisehealth.com. We can help you work through some of the fundamentals and point you to some good resources. But if we're at a place that we're ready to continue on, I know everybody loves pivot tables. So all I have to say is, if you hear the word pivot and you do not think Ross, we probably cannot be friends. Okay, pivot tables. How do you even know when to use them? Whitney Houston, how do you even know? If you think back to all of the Whitney days of interviews and everything, you know she fearlessly just always did. And you should think, okay, pivot tables, I'm going to go in, I'm going to pivot my data, and I'm going to make it work like VH1 Divas. Okay, a couple things to know. For pivot tables, we want to make sure we always have column headings, we select the data appropriately, and that we look at what is being output in the pivot table to make sure it still makes sense. So first and foremost, before we even get into this, let's take a look at how to make sure our data makes sense to us. So let's go here. I'm giving you a lot of so. I feel very, very Kiss Paul Stanley. I love the way he says so. First, Identifying duplicate values. There's so many ways to do different things. One of the ways that I like to look for dupes, and if we need to get rid of them in the listing, for instance, here is just a basic example of some employees, for instance, and none of these are real employees, but some employee names, and then credentials that they have, and states. As you can see, Matt Carr, we have nothing in here for him, and I want to keep him with the same state, so we're going to put him as Virginia for both. Okay, so if we want to get rid of duplicates, maybe in this listing, for instance, how would we go about doing that? Okay, we want to see how many maybe unique states we have or something. So let's go over to data, and we have selected the states, remove duplicates. And do we want to expand the selection so that it takes in everything? Sure, why not? Let's see, we want to look at the duplicate states. See, there we go. We're going to ignore the name and credential for a moment, but basically what we want to see is how many states have unique values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we have a couple of unique states. Let's undo that. So Control Z. And we're back to the data we had. So if we want to do different things with this, if we want to count how many different credentials we have or how many different people we have in this listing. So here, this isn't a one-to-one, so we're not seeing, for instance, David Class has PMP and CPC. We're not seeing that in one line. So it's really not a one-to-one when it comes to the name. Instead, it is listing out name of individual, credential, and state over and over again for the person. So how would we be able to look at this quickly and come up with what we want to know? We could filter, so just some basic filtering. If we go and select the row and then data and filter, this is one way of doing it. We could, if we wanted to see people just in maybe the state of Florida, if anybody's in the state of Florida, who is that? Okay, good, it's the same person, that's fine. It's just making sense of the data, taking a look at it and saying like, okay, can I just make some quick assumptions, see what I want to see? Does this data really work for me? Do I want to get rid of any blanks? We could go to this filter, and instead of selecting all, we'll just select the blanks. That'll show us just the blanks, actually. So let's look at that. Good, Matt Carr, that makes sense. I'm going to Control Z, get out of that. We want to remove the blanks. Let's select everything, get rid of the blanks. Here we go. Excellent. Another easy way of doing filter is the formula filter. The entire array is the table. And then we are going to select name. For instance, we want to see just one of these names. We're going to pick one that has two or more entries. I'm seeing David Class. So let's say that within column A equals, and we're going to use quotes because it is a text class. And then we just want to see table of just David Class. And here it is. So it's a nice little quick shortcut for us. If we want to play with first and last names, so this is an issue I've seen in Excel so many time after time, for years. I love what has happened to Excel now. I feel we're really living in the golden age of Excel. I'm going to type from cell A2, Cindy in one cell, and then Doe in the next. And so that's first and last name. There's many ways to do this. You could parse out the text using some of the string formulas and so forth. But for here, I want to show this. I love this. It makes Excel so much more efficient. I typed in Cindy. I'm going to the cell below, and I'm going to hit Control E. And that populates the first names for the rest of column D. Now, if I want to get the last names, because I typed in Doe, I'm going to do Control E. And there we go. So that splits it up in case we need to do anything with last names, for instance. If we want to do perhaps last names with credential, with a comma, like you would see it in real life maybe. So if we want to do Doe and then comma, credential here, okay, and then we'll do same thing, Control E, and there we go. So you can mix and match however you want it to look. It's just a nice way of doing some shortcuts here. Finally, let's do just a quick little pivot table on this this data, this original table, just to see if, for instance, if we want to see how many CPCs do we have working here. So by I, because this is a pretty easy small example, we see Brandy is a CPC, we see that David is a CPC, and Cindy's a CPC, so we should be able to see 3. But let's just go ahead and make this a quick pivot table. So I'm going to select pivot table. What is the data I want to include in my pivot table? We are going to take the state, the credential, the name. We have our columns header properly, so there are titles for them, so proper headers. And we'll select that, press enter. And we want it to go right here in the worksheet. Why not? Okay. How do we find out what we want to find out? So let's do credential as the columns, for instance. Let's do that as columns. Okay, cool. So that's listing out each credential. Let's put the names as the rows. Okay. Why isn't this populating any information here? Because we haven't put anything in for the values. So you could take anything you want for the values. It's going to just be numbers, basically. Here, with what we've done, we could see the count of credentials, that we have 3 CPCs, which is what we thought we would find. There's so many ways to set up what we want to do with a pivot table, and we'll get into it with more real-life examples in a moment. But this is just a quick way of saying, like, okay, how could we look at this? Another way we could look at it, if there's like, you know what, it's a little clunky, it's not the way we want. Cindy D is listed here twice because we probably Cindy Doe, Cindy D, whatever, Kiki D. Okay, we have blank because we know that somebody is blank there. Good. PMP, 1 PMP, that was the David. The CPC, 3 of them. The count of credentials. Okay, so we don't want the names, but we just want to see the credentials. There's something else interesting. Let's get rid of this pivot table. So I just selected it, and I'm going to hit delete, and there we go, it's gone. Something else interesting, which I really like, I think this is pretty cool, certainly didn't exist when I was learning Excel. We're going to select the table and then insert, I lied, I think it's under data, let's find it. Page layout, maybe it is insert. It is insert. Recommended pivot tables, let's click that. And it tells you, like, hey, did you think of this? Do you want to do count of state? Do you want to do count of name? Do you want to do count of first name? Count of credentials? This is a cool way for Excel to tell you, hey, have you thought about doing a pivot table of this? Again, great information, pretty cool to use. Okay, moving on. Let's see what else we have here. We have sample data. This is de-identified data, real-life data for an urgent care case that we were reviewing. So first of all, what do you want to do when you have data that you want to play with? Create a duplicate tab. How do you do that? Select your tab, right-click, move or copy, and create a copy. It's that simple. Now you have play data, so you could do absolutely anything with this. You could delete it, you could play around with it, there's no breaking it, don't be afraid. This is your sample data, so this is a good one to have just to play around with directly. How do you delete a tab? You right click it and you delete. Once you delete it, it is permanently deleted, so let's just be careful in case you didn't want to delete a tab, but if you were playing with one and then wanted to delete it, you would be able to do it that way. Remember, save often because you don't want to lose your work. When we're navigating around data and we want to take a look at things quickly, hold down Control and you could navigate with your arrows to go across or up and down for the data. So if we want to get to the bottom of this, we're going to hit Control and down arrow. That takes us to the last row here. This is pretty cool because I know that this is already summed up. So we have paid information. How do we even know what this column is for? So we have a sum here, a subtotal, that's good. How do we even know what this is? Well, it would be helpful if we had our first row staying there so we could know what the header is. How do we do that efficiently? Let's get up there. So control up arrow. Great. We see that it's payments. So let's do this. We're going to go to home, review, view. Okay, view. We're going to freeze our pane. So freeze the top row. We'll continue to keep this static. If we wanted to, so here we go. I'm going to scroll down to show that. Okay, so we just froze it. That's freezing the panes. That's the top. If we want to freeze a column, for instance, if we want to see the patient primary carrier subscriber ID, so the ID plus the top header, we would freeze the pane from here and simply unfreeze because we just froze. Now freeze again, and it will freeze everything around the cell that is selected. So we're selecting here in this case C2, we're going to freeze, and now we can go through the data in all different ways and it'll stay up. If we wanted to continue to be able to see a total at the bottom, how would you do that? You're not going to freeze that pane. You would do split. This is great in Word, Microsoft Word. If you're using like maybe reviewing documents or something, you'd be able to split the panes there as well. This split is pretty nice because it allows you to really go through things much quicker, and you would be splitting wherever you want to see that. So it's just a nice feature to play around with. And freeze panes, as we mentioned. So we're going to freeze the top row again as we go through this. Filtering allows us to focus on data that we want to see. So the last example we did was very, very simple. But if we wanted to filter on just the 99 code, so if we want to look at those basic E&M, okay, 99, any code set, any of the build claims here in this file start with 99. You could just do it right here in the filter and it will bring those up. If we're wondering, how many of these lines do we have? A simple way, I like to sometimes just play with the data and make sure it makes sense to me. I'm going to do Shift Control and down arrow, and that tells me that we have a count of 26,457 cells. Okay, so this is pretty large. We have 26,000 lines here. If we want to see of the 99 CPT code what our payments were, again, quick and dirty, we're just going to make sure we start at the top. Shift Control down arrow, and then that tells us that the sum is 2.5 million and 26,000 rows, the average being 94. So I like to use these bottom numbers to just give me a quick reading on how we're doing. Okay. If we want to do other ways of filtering, so now I'm going to get rid of this filter. Don't ever forget, like if you're in the middle of trying different things, you don't want to stay filtered on something that you forgot about. That tends to happen to me. Okay, if we wanted to just look at perhaps a certain date, let's see what kind of service dates we have. Okay, so if we wanted to just look at 2022 dates, one way of filtering it is like this. Another way that we could filter would be to actually right click. Okay, so you right click somewhere, whatever column, and then filter by selected cell value. That's just going to give us that date, which is kind of interesting. So that's one way of filtering as well if you want to go up to the top and sort it down. So again, I'm going to Control Z. If we want to remove empty columns, let's find an empty column, or maybe a column that doesn't even work for us. Modifier 2, I see some information in here, modifier 2, but if we said, you know, hey, let's do a better example. If we wanted to get rid of CPT code description, because I see charge code description, CPT code description, say for instance we said, oh, this is too much noise, we just want to get rid of this one. Instead of deleting it, we could delete the information altogether. We could just hide it, and then we don't have to even think about it. Keep in mind when you copy and paste information, say if you were to copy a bunch of columns, it's going to continue to copy what's in there. So if you're pasting it into a different tab, you'll still have that. But that's okay. All right. Some other good features for our filter is sorting. So you could sort from smallest to largest. Pretty simple stuff. If you want to look at it for whatever reason, if you wanted to do that with dollar values, feel free to do that. Payments, and we could start with the largest to smallest. So let's see how much payment. Ooh, some for 465. I guess one for 465. And then conditional formatting. This is often a question of if you're setting up your workbook to look eye-appealing. If we wanted to do some conditional formatting here, let's go back to it not being sorted. So I unselect that. But I feel like, is that going to really do anything? Probably not. So let's Control Z it and Control Z again. There we go. Back to the way it was. Conditional formatting. Let's select an amount. So I like maybe 80 bucks. We have a 75 here, so that's lower. We have 155, that's higher. Let's conditional format this to show us some information. If it's greater than 80 bucks, we want to give it a green. If it's less than 80, we will give it a red. Now be careful again that it could be equal to 80 and that's not going to give you any color, but let's do this. Okay, so okay to this, and now we'll conditional format it to be less than, and less than 80 is going to be red, and there we go. If you want to do equals to 80, like, oh hey, I realize I want to do 80. Okay, cool. We can again highlight and then do the equals to. So if this is not enough to put you to sleep, I want to fall asleep myself. We could conditional format on anything. Numbers are great, but you could also do it based on text. Feel free to Google conditional formatting for more information. This just gives you enough to be quick and dirty about it. I think we're finally ready to go into some pivot tables. So why not do that? Also, if you want to quickly insert a column or a row, let's go over that now. So you would select, let's do a column in between CPT code and charge code. We're going to select here and Alt-I-C. That inserts a column. If you wanted to do something like where you were adding information or putting yes, no logic, whatever you want to do there. If you want to do a row instead of a column, you would go to whatever row you go below where you want to insert it. Alt-I-R. Nope. Alt-I-R. Can't talk and Excel at the same time. So Alt-IR gives us the row, and that's enough of that. Pivot table, let's go for it. We've been talking about it, let's do it. I want to make sure that this is our clean information. Everything looks good. Yep, absolutely. I don't want to have anything hidden, so I'm going to double click. Gives me all my columns back. I selected all the information. A couple ways to do that. You can select from the top left right here, or you could do Control A and that will select everything for you as well. We are going to go to Insert, Pivot Table. I already have the data selected where I want it to come from. Let's do it in a new worksheet because this is rather large. Before we were showing it in the same worksheet. We'll do it in a new worksheet now. Okay. And here we are. If we want to know basic things like which CPT code was billed the most, we can figure that out with the pivot table. So we are going to go on CPT value. We like that. Let's do charge code category. Interesting. Okay, so count of CPT codes. How many times did that happen? Does that really tell us what we want? Here's a good way of just double checking. So let's see the data behind it. We'll start with one of the smaller ones. Radiology, we see count of CPT code is 35. Double click on that, and here we go. Radiology and CPT codes that we have here. We have, I'm seeing 71046. Okay, so this happened 35 times is what we would expect to see, and that is correct. So I see it at the bottom right here, 35. Radiology, so that's one way of looking at it. What else would we want to know? Maybe how many times was modifier 25 billed with an E&M? So let's put in here our modifier as a column, modifier 25, and we'll do our CPT code. Let's select field setting, and we can do manual filter. We could do manual filter, so that's fine. But is there a better way of doing it? Let's do this. Then back to the 99. So now this is going to give us the 99 series, and if we only want to look at that, we're filtering here. Okay. Why does this not have anything in it? Because we didn't put anything into the values at the bottom right. Let's do that. How many times was modifier 25 used on a particular E&M? Maybe a 99214. That's a lot. Let's take a look at what that is just to see it. Let's look at the sample data. We double click and we see that modifier 25 listed here, 99214. That's one way of being able to just dive right into like whatever we're looking for there. So how many times was modifier 25 billed with the E&M? If we want to add in a filter with what we're looking at with our pivot table, we could say, so there's different ways of dealing with your pivot table. If we wanted to list it out from smallest to largest, we could do that. So let's sort the lowest number of, okay, so let's do this as we're saying it. So if we wanted to sort our modifier 25 occurrence by CPT, what we would do is more sort option and then the modifier, the count of CPT code. And let's see if this works. So it goes by smallest to largest here, grand total. So one modifier 24 was used for this code. CS used 7 times, GT, and then it going up, right? Okay, so that's one way of doing it. If we wanted to, let's see what else, filter. It's all different ways of doing this, okay? If we wanted to filter out for just the, say, the billing provider for MD, we do it here. So we're going to put in the filter here, and let's just see which ones of these just an MD billed for. So it's another way of like slicing it down if you wanted to. And don't ever be afraid to change these around, because you could keep guessing and testing until you find exactly what you want to do. When you're copying and pasting information across, if you're using this information for different things, the way that you would normally do your references, you could, let's say plus this. Normally you would copy and paste something down and you would get the formula copying and pasting down for you. It doesn't work with pivot tables that way. So what you would have to do instead is copy the absolute information. So here we go, the absolute values, paste it, and then do whatever you want to do here. So let's do this plus this. And if you want to copy and paste it down, then it's going to work. And the numbers change there. So it's just something that I wanted to mention because it often gives a little bit of confusion. Okay. If we wanted to copy and paste this information in other ways. So moving on actually from just that, let's say if we wanted to copy and paste values versus formulas, okay? So let's give us an example of the values versus formulas. Take the values here, paste it as we did. So we're going to say values. This will do formula. And we will just do a simple formula. Fine. We could copy and paste that down. That's going to continue to paste the formula down. Copy, Control C, Control V. As you could see over here, this continues to propagate down. But if we wanted to paste the value, instead of doing it the way that we just did, we're going to Alt, let's see, go to the next one, Alt ES, and that could just provide us with the value instead of the formula. Double click on that, it's a value. This is still the formula. We just copied it and we Alt ES the value. If we want to bring the formula over with us, we would copy it and then Alt ES and give us the formula. That's what we've been doing. If we want to do formats, okay, so let's say we want to change the formatting. Here we have dollars accounting. We want to copy this format and bring it over here, for instance, to this value. We do Alt ES and just do the format. And let's take a look. Excellent. Let's get rid of the zeros because I hate looking at cents. Simple stuff. If we wanted to take our values that are in a column and throw them into a row, we copy that, Alt ES, and we would use transpose. So sometimes you need that just depending on what you're doing. Visuals are great. Eric told me this earlier this week, so let's give some visuals. Let's create a new tab and do just a quick month to show us. So January, and bring that down. Gives us the months. We don't have to type them out. There we go. And I want to say month. An amount. Let's do revenue. Let's say our revenue for the month of January is $2,000, and each month after that is going to increase by 10%. So that will be 1. Okay. And then copy that and paste it down. Again, different ways to do it. We could Control C and bring it all the way down here. We could drag it down however we want to do it. If we wanted to look at this in a graph format, we'd select this and insert and pivot. Recommended charts. Let's take a look. Recommended charts. Here we go. And that would give you perfect use. There you go. That's a great simple graph to show us. Finally, we know from auditing different claims, we need to often look at what was billed and then what we are auditing. Does that make sense for it to be billed that way? So would we want to change it? So this is a typical type of thing we would see. For data service, whatever, let's make up some old dates. Billed versus audited. Okay, let's see if we wanted to say, is this supported, not supported, undercoded, overcoded? What are we doing? Undercoded, overcoded, supported. Okay, so equals G2 is greater than E2. So this is, did our audited code come in at a higher code, meaning that it was undercoded, right? So it could have been billed at a 99213, but we thought it should be a 99214. What does that mean? That means that it was undercoded. So we are going to give it undercoded. What else could be, if that's not the case, we could have it be overcoded, which means that this would be less than this. And we are going to say that that would be overcoded. We're going to add in an if because it has to be nested. And then if it is equal, so let's put in the final, because if it's true, if it's not, goes to this if it's not, goes to this if. And that will tell us supported. I can see already that I missed this. There we go. Okay, perfect. And supported. Our nest. One more. Need that open. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Supported. Let's pull this down and see. We should see overcoded here, and then because the 99214, 99212, and that'll be supported the next one. And then here we go. This is going to be an undercoded if I did the if nesting ifs properly. There it is. Undercoded, and then finally another overcoded. If we wanted to just allow somebody to take a look at the codes and then populate it themselves, rather than having someone have the opportunity to do an incorrect spelling if they were keying it in for each one, or rather than doing nested ifs or some such thing, we could always do supported, undercoded, overcoded. Perhaps NA, what if we didn't get the record? Okay. And then here, let's say we wanted to CPT live results, like we're auditing live, let's say live. And what we would do here is we would do data and data validation. Instead of any value, we would do list, and then select the list that we want, sort. Here we go. Oh, that's just my fave. Okay. Select that one more time. Much better. And that gives us our options of what we selected here. So basically you're just creating a list, data validation to put it in, and then whoever's auditing, you would want to pull this down for every single row that you want to allow for the drop down. And same thing, you could do it for modifier 25, you do yes, no, you would have your list created again, yes, no, NA, and we'll click here, data validation, and we will go to list, source, select this, and that gives us yes, no, supported for the modifier 25 or not. So setting up your audit workbook, pretty simple. If we wanted to make sure all of this looks formatted properly, so you might want to hide this if that's where your list is coming from. You could hide this. If we want to, this kind of looks ugly. I'm not seeing like a bottom underline of that max W. As you note, these are all members of the E Street Band. I like that. We could show borders for all of this. So let's go over here. We'll give each of them the same border, home, and then the border right here. All borders, cool. We want it to be the same font rather than having to go up here and play with all of that. We could take this and copy it, paste it. I don't know if that'll give us actually a format. Let's see. Okay, there it did. I didn't know if it would give us an issue with it being a number to text, but it didn't. So we're going to copy it one more time and bring it over to the rest of the data. Alt-ES, formats, pretty simple stuff. Great. Moving back on to some additional formulas. So beyond pivot tables, and again, pivot tables, play around with it until you get what you want. You can usually find videos or any kind of resources online, so don't feel that you had to get your pivot table correct first time, every time. It doesn't happen. Just keep playing around with it as much as required. So for your VLOOKUP, it's useful if you have unique values and structured in a certain way. If not, it really isn't the easiest, best tool. It's not the best formula. I'd highly recommend using more of an XLOOKUP or a index match. And you could look those up again on YouTube. There's some great videos out there. I'm going to ask my team to share some of those videos as well. SUMIF will give you a lot of what the pivot table will give you. You could SUMIF and give it criteria and then have it come back for you. But I like pivot tables a little bit better than that. So many resources online, Google, YouTube, Excel. If you go to the help, let's do that. If you go to help here, you can always look up whatever you want. You can look it up here in the search. If you want to go to file and then from the home area, welcome to Excel, gives you some tutorials here. Formulas, pivot tables, so really good information to have there that Excel just has for you. Then also, as we went over recommended charts and recommended pivot tables, so that's a nice little way of fast tracking yourself. Finally, some Excel shortcuts. So we went over some of these. Control Z for the undo, Control Y for the redo, insert columns, insert rows, select all data, copy paste. Rather than just this same old copy paste, I really do like the Alt-ES, which allows you to get that paste special. And then formatting hacks. If you want to get really fancy, you could do the Alt-ES-W, which will set the width of the column to the same that is the size of what you copied. If you want to transpose, we showed that. And then finally, the format painter will give you some of that, what we were doing with the Alt-ES and then format. So are you ready to pivot into your own rest of your day? Because I feel like I really need a nap after all of this Excel business. Thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to let us know if you have questions. If you want to see anything else, we could always follow up with a blog, some additional information. We have data experts who are certainly a lot better than I am, who could share more information with you. So just let us know if there's something you want to see. Thank you so very much for your time today.